It was raining that night when he walked in, soaked from head to toe. I was the only one still working. Weeks later, that same man stood in front of everyone and said 5 words that changed my life forever. This woman will be my wife. But let me start from the beginning because you won't believe how we got there. Before you go on, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this story is going to take you somewhere you don't expect. Stay with me until the end. Now let me tell you everything. My name doesn't matter much in this story. What matters is what I looked like to everyone else and what I actually was underneath. I was a big woman, heavy, round, soft in all the places people love to point at and laugh about. I worked at a small restaurant on the corner of a busy street, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and a bell over the door that jingled every time someone walked in. I had worked there for almost 4 years. I knew every table, every regular's order, every squeak in the floorboards. It wasn't a fancy job. It wasn't a job anybody bragged about, but it was mine and I was good at it. Every single day, someone had something to say about my body. Coworkers would make little comments under their breath, thinking I couldn't hear them, though I always could. Customers would glance at me, then look at each other and smirk. Some were bold enough to say it right to my face. "Girl, how do you even fit behind that counter?" One man once asked me if I ate for a living instead of working for one. I heard it all, and every single time I said nothing. I just kept moving, kept wiping down tables, kept carrying plates that were sometimes heavier than what people thought I could carry. People assume that when you don't respond to cruelty, it means it doesn't hurt you. That's not true. It hurts every time, but I had bills to pay. I had a life to keep together. I didn't have the luxury of losing a job over someone's rude mouth. So I swallowed it every single day, and I kept working because at the end of it all, I needed that paycheck more than I needed anyone's approval. I used to tell myself something my grandmother told me once. She said, "Baby, the ones who laugh loudest are usually the ones hiding the most pain." I didn't always believe her, but I held on to those words anyway because they were the only thing that got me through some of those long, humiliating shifts. Then came that rainy night. It was late, almost closing time. The rain outside was coming down so hard you could hear it hitting the windows like little stones. The street was empty. Most of the staff had already gone home, and I was finishing up, wiping down the last table, getting ready to lock the doors. That's when the bell above the door rang. I turned around, expecting maybe a regular who forgot something or someone looking for shelter from the storm. Instead, I saw a man standing there completely drenched. His clothes were soaked through, sticking to him, water dripping from his hair down his face. He didn't look like much in that moment. No umbrella, no driver waiting outside, nothing that would have told me who he really was. He just looked like a tired, wet man who had nowhere else to go. He asked if he could get a cup of tea, even though we were about to close. Now, most days, I would have told a customer that the kitchen was already shut down, that they'd have to come back tomorrow. But something about the way he stood there, shivering, looking almost embarrassed to even be asking, made me pause. I looked at him and I thought about how many times I had been the one people didn't want to make room for. How many times someone had looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the extra effort. I didn't want to be that person to him. So I told him to sit down, and I made him a cup of tea myself. I remember the way steam rose off that cup when I set it in front of him, and the way his shoulders relaxed just a little bit when he wrapped his hands around it. He looked up at me and said thank you in a way that felt different from how people usually said it, like he actually meant it, like it actually mattered to him. He drank his tea slowly, said very little else, paid, and left into the rain. I didn't think much of it after that. It was just one small kindness on one long night. I had no idea it would change everything, but he came back the next day. And the day after that, and soon it became a pattern. Every single day around the same time, he would walk in and ask for me specifically. He always ordered tea, nothing else, no matter what was on the menu. At first, I thought maybe he just really loved tea. But as the days went on, I started to notice something else. He wasn't just there for the drink. He was watching how I worked, how I handled rude customers, how I moved through my long shifts without ever raising my voice or losing my patience. He watched the way I still smiled at people even when they didn't deserve it. I didn't know his name for the longest time. He never offered it, and honestly, I never asked. It wasn't my place to pry into a customer's life. But there was something calm about him, something steady, like a man who had seen a lot of things in his life and had learned not to make noise about any of it. He would sit in the same corner booth every time, quiet, polite, always leaving a bigger tip than the bill required, like he was trying to say something he didn't know how to say out loud. I started to look forward to seeing him. Not in a way I could explain to anyone, not even to myself really. It was just nice to have someone treat me like I mattered, even if it was just through small gestures. A polite nod, a genuine thank you, eye contact that didn't feel like judgment. Then one evening, everything changed. It was a busy night. The restaurant was hosting a private party for a group of women celebrating something I never even found out what. They came in dressed in expensive clothes, dripping in jewelry, laughing loudly like they owned the whole building. I was assigned to help serve their table that night, along with my regular duties. From the moment they sat down, I could feel the energy. The kind of energy some people carry when they believe the whole world exists to serve them. They snapped their fingers instead of saying please. They complained about things that weren't even wrong, and then their eyes landed on me. One woman in particular, clearly the loudest and most confident of the group, looked me up and down like I was something she found stuck to the bottom of her shoe. She called me over, and at first I thought maybe she needed something for the table. But instead, in front of her friends, in front of the entire restaurant, she said the words that would replay in my mind forever. "You're as big as an elephant," she said, laughing, looking to her friends for approval. "How do you even move around back there? Do they pay you extra for taking up so much space?" Her friends erupted into laughter, loud, cruel, echoing laughter that seemed to fill the whole restaurant. My face went hot with embarrassment. My hands were shaking, but I kept them still. I stood there and took it, the way I had taken every insult before that one. I told myself it would pass like it always did. I told myself I just needed to get through the rest of my shift. What I didn't know was that he was sitting there too, in his usual corner booth, watching every second of it unfold. I didn't even notice him get up. One moment I was standing there, trying to hold myself together, and the next moment I heard his voice, calm but firm, cutting through the laughter like it was nothing. "That's enough," he said. The table went quiet. Every single one of those women turned to look at him, confused, like they couldn't understand who would dare interrupt their fun. The woman who had insulted me crossed her arms and looked at him like he was beneath her attention. "Excuse me," she said, "who even are you? And what is she to you?" I remember holding my breath in that moment. I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't know what any of this meant. All I knew was that for the first time in years, someone was standing up for me in public, and I didn't know how to process it. He looked at her, then he looked at me, and something in his eyes softened completely. He walked closer, right in front of everyone, right in front of that whole restaurant full of strangers, and he said the words I will never forget for as long as I live. "This woman will be my wife." The entire restaurant went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The woman who had humiliated me stood there, her mouth open, completely speechless for the first time all night. Her friends looked at each other, unsure what to even say. I stood there too, frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. He turned to me then, and for the first time I saw something in his face I hadn't seen before. Not pity, not sympathy, something closer to respect and something even closer to love. He told me, right there in front of everyone, that he had been watching me for weeks, that he had seen how I treated people with kindness even when they didn't deserve it, that he had seen how hard I worked, how much dignity I carried even while people tried to strip it away from me. He said he didn't care what anyone else thought of my body because he had never once been looking at my body. He had been looking at my heart. I started crying right there. Not sad tears, not the kind I had been holding back for years after every insult. These were different. These were tears of shock, of relief, of something I didn't even have words for in that moment. I said yes. I don't even remember deciding to say it. It just came out of me like it had been sitting there waiting for the right moment for a long, long time. He walked over and kissed me, right there in front of everyone, in front of the same women who had just tried to tear me down. The arrogant woman who had insulted me stood there humiliated, completely exposed in front of her own friends, in front of a room full of strangers who now knew exactly what kind of person she was. She didn't say another word. She grabbed her things and she stormed out of that restaurant, her heels clicking angrily against the floor, her face red with embarrassment. I found out later exactly who he was. He wasn't just some man who liked tea on rainy nights. He was a billionaire, a man who owned businesses and buildings across the whole city, a man who could have walked into any five-star restaurant in the world and been treated like royalty. Instead, he had chosen to sit in a small corner booth in my little restaurant, night after night, just to be near someone who had shown him one simple act of kindness on a rainy night when he had nothing and no one. We got married the very next day. It wasn't some big, extravagant wedding with hundreds of guests and flashing cameras. It was quiet, simple, and real, just the two of us and the promise we made to each other. I remember standing there looking at him, thinking about how just weeks earlier I had been someone people laughed at in public, someone who absorbed insult after insult and never said a word back. And now here I was, standing next to a man who saw me, really saw me, in a way no one else ever had. After we married, he never once asked me to change who I was to please him. But he did encourage me to take care of myself gently, patiently, always with love instead of shame. We started working out together in the mornings. He would wake up early and walk with me, slow at first, just around the block, encouraging me the whole way. Over time, those walks turned into longer walks, then light workouts, then real exercise. He never pushed me too hard. He never made me feel like I wasn't good enough as I was. He always reminded me that this wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about becoming the healthiest, strongest version of the woman he had already fallen in love with. Months passed, and slowly my body began to change. Not because I hated what I used to look like, but because for the first time in my life, someone believed in me enough to help me believe in myself. I grew stronger. I grew more confident. I started to walk taller, not because of how I looked, but because of how I felt inside. The years of silent humiliation started to fade, replaced by something I had never really known before: peace. We built a life together, full of quiet mornings and long conversations and love that didn't need an audience to prove itself. I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot those long shifts, those cruel words, those nights I went home and cried alone because I didn't have anyone to stand up for me. But I also never let that pain define the rest of my life. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't understand back then. Kindness is never wasted, even when it feels like it disappears into nothing. That one cup of tea I made for a stranger on a rainy night, that one small act of compassion I gave without expecting anything in return, ended up changing the entire course of my life. I wasn't kind to him because I knew who he was. I was kind to him because it was simply who I was, even on the nights when the world had given me every reason not to be. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: never let anyone's cruel words convince you that you are less than you are. The people who mock you, who laugh at you, who try to make themselves feel bigger by making you feel smaller, they don't get to decide your worth. Only you do. Keep being kind even when it's hard. Keep showing up as your best self even when no one seems to notice. Because you never know who is watching. You never know whose life you might change with one simple act of kindness. And you never know when your own life is about to change completely, all because you chose compassion over bitterness, even on your hardest days. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments. Tell me if you've ever been judged for something you couldn't control and how you got through it. Share this video with someone who needs a little hope today. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you're subscribed because there are so many more coming. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I'll see you in the next one.